Hello everyone, welcome back to this C programming tutorial. This tutorial is brought to you by Zeedup Technologies. In this video, we will see about the scope rules in C programming language. So before that, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new project. By now, you all know that how can we create a new project in our code blocks IDE. But to just revise it for once, you can just open up your code blocks IDE. This is something known as a welcome screen. You can go to create a new project, and from here we are just now working on a console application, which is the simplest of all the applications. Then you can click on go, click on next, and now you need to choose the C as the programming language. It has given us an option to choose C++ as well, but since we are coding in C, so we are going to choose C right now. Then click on next. Let's give it a title that is scope rules. This is going to be the name of the project. Then click on next and on finish. Then in these project panes, you can see that there is a folder called sources, and it is the code called main.c. This is a C file in which some of the code is pre-written. So this is what we are going to be working with. We can just get rid of this printf statement. Now when we talk about the scope rules in C, then the thing that comes to our mind is that in C there are two types of variables based upon their scope. These variables are known as the local variables and the global variables. So the local variables have a local scope and the global variables had a global scope. So we will see both of these variables and try to look what is the difference between them with the help of an example. So here we have a function that is known as main. Okay. Now instead of main, suppose we write another function, say int. Int is going to be the return type of our function, that is, it is going to return an integer value. Okay. Then the function name that I'm going to go with is sum, and I'm going to accept two arguments into our sum, that is int x and int y. Both of the integer arguments I'm going to accept, and then inside the body of the function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare another variable called z, and in z I'm going to just add these two values. So that's going to be int z equals x plus y. That's it. So z variable over here is known as the local variable. Why it is known as a local variable? Because z is declared inside the sum function, which means that whatever the scope of the z is, it is limited to whatever the scope of the sum function is. That is a local variable. That means the scope of that particular variable is limited to that particular function or that particular object in which it is being created or it is being declared. So z over here is a local variable, and we can just return the value of z over here. If you want to cross check it, then you can check that since we have used z here, so there is no problem in using z, because z is of course a part of this sum function. But what happens if we try to call this function sum and try to store it in z again? Z equals sum. Let us provide some value. So we are just calling this sum function by using this z over here. Okay. So let us just try to run it. First we will try to build it. Then you can see that we have got an error message at the line number 12, and this is the line number 12 where we have got this kind of a stopping sign, that error z undeclared first use in this function. So this means that the variable named as z is not declared, so we cannot use it in this function inside the main. If we want to use it, then what we can do is simply we can declare an integer called z like this, and then we can just use it. And if we want to print the value of this variable z, what you can do is simply use this mod d, and you can just print the value of z like this. Okay, now if we just build it once again, now we have just declared z. You can see there is no error, no warning, and then you can simply run your piece of code and you can see the answer as 11. So that is the local variable that is the example of a local variable, our local variable known as z. Now let us talk about global variables. The local variables have a limited scope, but the global variables do not. The global variables have unlimited scope. So suppose if we declare any variable over here that is not a part of any function, that is not a part of main function, that is not a part of some function or any other function, let us just declare a variable, say int g. So this g variable over here is actually a global variable. It is a global variable. Okay. Now another difference between a global variable and a local variable is that a global variable by default is initialized with a value of 0. Right now we have not given any number to it, we have not initialized anything. Now if we just try to use this function, or if we just try to use this variable, if we just try to print the value of this variable g, then what happens is we can just put a comma and g. And now if we just build it, run it, then you can see we have got 0 over here. So 0 is the default value of a global variable. On the other hand, if we just omit this line by commenting it out, right now z is a local variable, we have declared z and we have simply printed the values of z and g. So now you can see on running it, we need to first build it so that we can run it. You can see again we are getting 0, but actually what is happening is in the local variable the garbage value is stored, and since garbage value cannot be displayed like this, so we are getting 0 over here. Now if you take a look at this warning sign, it is saying that warning, z is used uninitialized in this function, which means that it gives an error if we use an uninitialized local variable, but there is no error if we use uninitialized global variable, because by default global variable gets a 0 value. So this is one thing. Another thing is right now we have declared a global variable, say g, and let us initialize it with a value, say 10. Okay. Now over here what do we do is we just use any other variable, we just declare another variable again by the name of g, and now we initialize the value as 20. Now what happens, let us just omit these two lines, or we can just get rid of this sum function because we do not need it right now, and we can just get rid of this z also. So what happens is we can just compile it and run it. Then you can see we have got the value of g as 20. Okay. Now what happens if you try to access this value of 10? If you want to access this value of global variable, then how can you do that? So the simple answer is, when you have declared a local variable by the same name as the global variable, then the value of the local variable will be accessed in that particular function. Now in case you want to access this value of a global variable, then a very simple approach could be, you need to just create a function. So let us just create a function, say of return type int, and let us name it as val. It is not accepting any arguments, and let us just initialize a variable named as, say, k to the value of g. Now over here the value of the global variable g will be taken, and we can simply return the value of variable k, or instead of initializing we can simply just write the statement as return g and it would do the work. Now over here what we can do is we can just declare another variable, say l, and over here if we just try to print its value, say printf, and let us just mark it as global for identification, and then we can use this placeholder and write l. Now what happens is over here 20 will be printed and over here 10 will be printed. Now let us just confirm this by running it once again. So it's 20 global, 16 actually 16 is printed. So let's see why that happened. We are not modifying the value in any case, still 16 is getting printed. Okay, so that must be some kind of an error over here. What we can do is we can simply just okay, the reason why we are getting it is because we have not taken up this l, so 16 is actually a garbage value. So we can just call out this function val over here on l, and then we can just simply run it. So 20 global 10. So that is how you can use the value of the global variable and the local variable despite the fact that they have got the same name inside a function. Okay, so for that purpose you can just create another function. You can just call that value by initializing that particular function with a value, and you will be able to do the work for yourself. So this is all about the scope rules in C, and that's all for this video.